Welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Brandon here with Colton, and today we are playing the Avatar deck that we previewed on this channel last week. And Colton, what are we playing against today?
I'm on Danmachi, Salvage Pants. I have not played a whole lot of this, so I make no promises.
Fair enough. So, but Danmachi in itself is kind of more of a generic, like that generically good 1k1 deck. Being able to put up a good example of just kind of a blanket attest as to what this deck, the Avatar deck itself, could put out there. Obviously, Danmachi has a bunch of different tools to help control its refresh, to help control its timings. But for Avatar, Avatar has a couple different things that it's trying to do. This Avatar deck has 3 different combos in which it is looking to run. And those combos essentially help propel it throughout the game. The level 1 Pants combo, trying to help get resources to hand. The Standby combo to just try to continue to maintain board in the mid game, and then the end game combo to try to burn out your opponent.
Yeah, I think the most interesting problem in Avatar right now is how can we make this level 3 Aang finisher pop off? Like, I think it is by far the most interesting card in the set. It has extremely high damage potential if you can make it work. And a lot of things have to come together for it to actually pop off, so for me anyway, as kind of an outsider looking in on Avatar, that's the card where I'm like, okay, if someone can find a way to make this card work, this deck becomes dangerous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, and this is really more just kind of that initial like test dive looking in. This is the initial like, hey, what things are required to make that happen, as well as
Mm-hmm.
trying to balance deck that way. So this is really more of a, hey, what are some of the things the deck can do as regards to the set itself. So it's kind of just kind of interesting to see some of the different pieces that the set has to offer. So like one of the things here being the event here that goes to memory, and when it's in memory, it now allows cards of any color to be played that are either characters on stage or climaxes. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't change for events. Events still have to follow color rule, but everything else now can be played regardless of color at any level. So like at level 1 here, I could play blue without having blue and clock.
Yeah, and I think the thing that makes this package most tempting is that it does have this, um, this kind of colorless thing going on with the level 1 event, but also the level 2 that lets you turn all kinds of cards into all kinds of triggers. So you get extra triggers, you're kind of incentivized for playing a bunch of colors. It takes away the punishment for playing heavily into 4 colors, which usually like that's a pretty serious deck building downgrade
Yeah,
if you're kind of stuck building a lot of colors. So Avatar trying to make it more feasible to play heavily into all 4 different colors. And of course, you also have the back row piece that lets you check the extra card on the Aang combo as well.
yeah. And so this turn it also has the climax swap shuffle back to be able to try to shuffle back the colors you need for the Aang combo, so you can
Mm-hmm.
try to guarantee your at least one of the Aang combos if you're on a small deck,
Mm-hmm.
or try to help ratio wise fix colors and whatnot. It also pumps up soul too, so you can kind of make either side attacks or make different decisions based off what your deck looks like. It's all these tools really are really interesting combined is where it
Mm-hmm.
gets a little tricky. So like the card in my level is a card that would normally I would like to have in deck to be able to trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So I could potentially trigger more pants or more standby or more choice. Now standby is the interesting part because standby the combo itself removes the standby from field, so it's no longer available to be triggered during that turn. But if I'm playing the standby on an off standby turn for the combo, it could potentially trigger more standby.
Mm. And that's kind of the challenge of running all these extra colors. In spite of the tech that allows you to benefit more from that, make it easier to actually play into all these colors, you still have to have a lot of things go right.
Sure.
Like a lot of things still need to just kind of work right now, the way that the deck is currently being constructed. But again, I think that we're in a universe where someone is going to solve this deck. I think this deck is solvable. I don't know if it's this list, but there is a way to solve this this Ang top end, and I think it'll work really well. As far as Danmachi's concerned, like on my side of the table, the reason I haven't talked about it is because it's just doing Danmachi things. Like what does it do? It gets its level 1 combo, it slams Climax, it gets torches, and goes. I'm pretty confident that this last card is a CX though, so I don't want to use the torch until I get my cancel.
Which is, I mean, understandable, right? Especially because you're like, no, if I can prevent one hit of damage coming in, that'll also be helpful a little bit further down the road too. Yeah.
And I do also think, though, that going back to Avatar, again, as someone who, like, I've not sleeved off Avatar, I've not played it, I've only watched it be played. It looks to me like Avatar's biggest problem is that it struggles to fix. Like, it really has a hard time turning cards into hand into cards you actually need. Like its best fixing tool looks like a drop searcher, and if that's your best fixing tool, there's a problem. So I think that's kind of where Avatar's biggest struggle is going to be, especially in a deck like this where it's going in a bunch of different directions because it can do so many different things. With all of its colors and all of its triggers, the fact that it's that hard to fix is going to be a problem for it long term.
Yeah, its fixing early is a little rough. But for example, the standby itself in my hand is effectively, as long as I have the 2 cards in waiting room, is effectively 2 cards on field. With also just a discard, pay 1, in addition to the standby itself. So it's like it has some fixing tools throughout the game. It's just a matter of like when they are available and how much effort does it take to get to that point.
I think that Avatar, to a certain extent, is a bit of a victim of its own design, because Bushiroad clearly wanted to explore some very unique design space with this, right? Like with the 2/1 that does a bunch of stuff with triggers, and then the Aang that can do a whole bunch if you're in a bunch of colors, and like they're pushing a lot of these profiles. But they were concerned, it seems, that they were going to be too powerful, so they really kind of hamstrung it by limiting its fixing. That's the way it reads from my perspective, anyway. Like, they were concerned that it might be too powerful if they gave it good tools, so they limited its access to fixing pieces for that reason. And like, who's to say if that's accurate? But that's just the way it reads to me.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty fair. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I think, especially with some of the tools potentially with like making things colorless, with making things a bit more challenging to deal with.
Yeah.
The other part of the coin is having not as many mill options in the deck, which is a problem that I'm immediately looking at right here, because I have 18 cards to go.
Right, but not only that, like the fixing in general. Like if you don't hit that brainstorm, we're probably starting this game over and not putting this one on the channel, because you would have had like 2 playables. Like you needed to rip that brainstorm, and you absolutely did. But because if you didn't, you have
and that's no just cards. It. I would have had a full field even without it, because I had at least the one Aang in hand.
Sure, but at that point your hand is completely empty.
And you'll actually notice as the game continues, my hand actually does get a little bit more filled. Um, because I can build that hand back. Um, there just is just kind of a it looks weird in the process of it kind of thing. It also helps that these cards here are about to win board, and especially because you don't have yellow in play,
Hmm.
you don't necessarily have the tools right now to be able to remove them from play.
Yeah, and I think that that's ultimately that's going to be the bigger issue here. It's like these things don't swing or sit that big. They're
No,
just 10K.
yeah,
This is not. They're like shoot. My level 1 combo can get over this. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like this is not a board that stays.
no, no, it's not. But it's a board that can come back re- repetitively
Hmm.
with just the use of a single standby, which I think is interesting.
Hmm.
Because in very rare cases can you actually stand by out something that spawns something into play.
Hmm.
Whereas this set has a couple of those things. Both the 3/2 that I did spawn out, and then the level 0 that's currently in my hand are things that could happen. Um,
Hmm.
like normally, I would like if I knew I had another standby in the deck, for example, I probably would put the Sokka down now. I probably would have used the Sokka now and then just kind of spawned out something else,
Hmm.
just kind of to thin out the deck a little bit more. But here as well, because I know I don't, I also know that I want to turn that into a playable for the next turn.
Hmm.
Because that one card then all of a sudden can potentially become two different playables,
Hmm.
which allows me to then better focus for the fixing tools for the end.
Yeah, and I think that that's where I think that where this standby combo is actually really strong is that it does break board just kind of on its own because it levels down. Like you slam a standby and all of a sudden you get to level down two things in addition to getting all the plussing into the front row.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I don't have yellow, so I don't have access to the hexproof early play that would remove these from board. It's a bit of a different kind of avatar strategy, right? Like usually, or standby strategy rather, right? Like normally, traditionally with standby, you're trying to make your board huge on defense. Don't let your opponent pop over it. Back it up, play defense, and clear your opponent's lanes. Here, it's like you're standbying out strikers.
Yeah.
You're leveling things down, and then you're beating overboard with the idea being that it doesn't matter if they win board cross turn, you're able to slam that standby and bring them back out.
Yep. And that's why I think it's one of the things that's really interesting about the deck is that it's a different look than your traditional look.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of this set is really just a uh, deck builder's dream kind of idea because there's so many different
Hmm.
profiles that can interact differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of weird stuff, honestly. It feels like Konosuba to me in a lot of
Mm.
ways, where it's like you have stuff that kind of looks and reads potentially suboptimal, but also some stuff that if you can get it together is actually super powerful, but it requires a lot of things to come together. That's what this set reminds me of.
And I think that that's fair. I think that this deck specifically has a lot of allusion to that. Because it's really trying to go for that end game combo, right? It's trying to get that
Hmm.
crazy burn off at the top kind of idea.
I chose to pass turn.
Because you knew the last card was the
because
climax.
yeah, because I have the cancel,
Yeah.
and that probably in retrospect wasn't the play because pushing you into 3 is probably the better call.
Hmm.
But I am worried about the ceiling on the Yang.
Well, and to be fair, I still have the climax in hand. I've had that in hand
Mm,
since like early in the game.
yeah.
So in many ways, you're probably assuming there's still a climax in deck somewhere.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't clock here. I thought about clocking the 2-1. Parks has an alarm ability that allows me to blind stock off the top of the deck. But I do need full field for that.
Yeah.
But I was also I was debating using the Sokka. I ended up not using it, so I could have clocked the Aang and actually gotten away with it and had been fine. But it was just more of, do I need the blind stock? And realistically, I have 6 stock going into this turn.
Hmm.
Ultimately, the answer was no, I don't need it. Yes, it would have been clean. Yes, it would have been perfectly fine to do. And probably would have made a lot of sense to do. Um, but ultimately, I didn't.
Hmm.
Which would have added an additional 2 cards to hand. It was probably the play here. However, so
Yeah. As for me, I'm thinking double combo. I have double combo in hand. I thought I was going to 3, but I didn't. So instead of instead of slamming double combo like I was planning, I just put down what I have access to just to push and get some stock because I can still double combo with 3 stock because it's a stock healer.
mhm.
And also pushing you into 3 gives me better it gives me a better chance to close because Danmachi's top end doesn't have a ton of reach.
So I use the Sokka to get the back row piece for my
Mm-hmm.
combo.
Yep.
Uh, just that way I could at least guarantee the one would middle 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And this kind of goes back to how tough it is to fix in this set. You only have one.
yeah.
Like you didn't hit the brainstormer, so you only get one combo, and that's probably one of the deck's biggest weaknesses is that like that lack of fixing is so apparent when you aren't even able to get a second lane of combo. When you had the turn to do it. It's not like you got pushed and
Hmm.
didn't have the necessary turns. You just never found the pieces you need.
Yeah. It.
So talking about what's getting shuffled back.
Yeah. Um, so it was just kind of a. It was interesting because like in here I was then just triple trigger too, so it's just kind of
Yeah,
like
that also isn't helping. Yeah.
a comedy of errors in a lot of way for that turn. Yeah.
Hmm.
But so now I'm out of climaxes. I have 5 cards clean
Hmm.
on the top of the deck. So you just need to stick 5 to be able
Yep.
to close the game. And even with just double Hestia, you have enough to be able to
Yeah.
get there. So
Even without CX, you have
yeah,
enough at that spot. But yeah, so that's I think that this is a good showcase of some of Avatar's most interesting profiles, but also some of its biggest weaknesses because it definitely has those weaknesses, right? Like
yeah,
that's as there is. I've said this a couple of times. There is a person out there who is going to take this set and is going to build a deck with this top end, and it's going to work. And they are going to get maximum value out of this top end. I don't know who that person is. I think they exist. But I
I
think that by and large, the rank and file Avatar deck is going to really, really struggle with its fixing, and it's going to really struggle with its non-combo plussing. Like, because other than Sokka, like your plussing just isn't great here, unless you slam standby all the time, and that also requires three different, requires three different CXs in the deck, right? So you're already in a deck that doesn't fix incredibly well. You're trying to get exactly what you need into waiting room so that you can slam the standby, so you can then try to double plus off the standby, but you need the standby in hand, so you also need to, you also need to CX swap, and then you need to get the choice in the hand so you can then slam the Aang, and hopefully you drew into a second copy of the Aang. There's a lot here. Like there's a lot that needs to go right, and as much as I think someone can solve it, it's going to be a hard puzzle to solve.
I yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think that with the right fixing tools, there's also a lot of things that can go right too. Um,
Oh sure, the ceiling is high. The
mhm.
floor is the ground. Like I mean, this
Yeah,
is like honestly, this in a lot of ways it feels like worse Gura in that way, where it's like, yeah, the ceiling's really high if everything comes together, but like if nothing comes together, if the deck falls apart in your hands, nothing's gonna happen. You're gonna run out of cards, and you're not gonna push anywhere near the amount of damage that you can. And whereas Hololive has, two sets worth of every profile under the sun, so Gura can kind of mitigate that floor just by having so many fixing tools to make sure that even its bad games go okay. Avatar doesn't have that. Like you're literally slamming Drop Searcher on Drop Searcher to get your pieces at that point because that's literally your best fixing tool. At zero, anyway.
yeah. No, I think that there's a lot of things that I think there's a lot of potential. I think in the set,
Mm-hmm.
and I think having this kind of exploratory look at that set and kind of some of the different tools that it has, I think is also a big thing too.
Yeah.
Um, I'm this is a deck. This is a set that I'm keeping my eye on as we get into the fall season, just because I think that there's a lot of potential with this set, and in the right hands, that this can be a pretty massive factor. Kind of that, almost like the dark horse in the an arena kind of idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to play into a really good Avatar player. Like if I don't want to play into the person who has been, working on Avatar for the last several months, walks into the room at regionals with a finely tuned deck of 50 cards that knows exactly how to, reach the ceiling with some level of consistency. I don't want to play against that person because that deck is actually very scary. But we'll see if it exists. We're not gonna see it for we're not gonna see it in regionals yet until September, so there are a couple of months yet until um, until Avatar will be tested on its biggest stage. In the meantime, we'll have a clock talk on Tuesday. No, we have a deck tech on Tuesday. Yeah.
Yep.
In the meantime, we have a deck tech coming up on Tuesday. I don't know what it is. Brandon's just picking something and he's going to make a deck out of it. We will have gameplay the following Thursday, clock talk, and 5 cards minutes the following week. Clock talk and 5 cards 5 minutes the following week. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.